Knew it was going to happen. He's gotten into the jaws of the machine. Where is it? It's the shark now. It's trying to destroy Russell. You know why? He was messing with the wrong power structure. He was a bit like Tucker. He went a little too far. If it's not, or it's the pharmacies, or it's this or that. Russell got himself in trouble. I want to cover this with you because I've got some information on this, and I want to stand with Russell because these guys are coming over, Red Rover, Red Rover. By the way, we also got Kevin McCarthy. We got to cover what's happening to him. He's caught between a rock and a hard place. He's going to be going with the Democrats and having to go get his help over there so that he creates the uniparty, reveals the uniparty that we've already known existed, or is he going to stand strong for both the Biden, exposure with the impeachment and trying to fight the $2 trillion debt? Well, he's stuck because he's got to do one or the other because Matt Gaetz, one bold patriot, is holding his feet to the fire, and he's got to make some choices, and he's caught in a very rough position right now. And where's this going to take us? It's going to take us into a powerful show. You don't want to miss it. And I want to say this right now. If you're tired of having, and it's so obvious that the game is being fixed. They're trying to take Russell, they demonetized Russell Brand off of YouTube. Now they're going after Rumble to say, we want him off of Rumble too. In the UK, they're demanding that he comes off completely. Well, you're going to have to respond. You got to push back like a patriot. This is your Lexington Concord moment. You need to go to lancewallnau.com/public square, public SQ. Why? You're going to do business with people that share your values. And you're going to eschew the people that are using your money to fight you and destroy you. We're actually going to use the economy as a weapon of war. Go to lancewallnau.com/public square. If you've got a business, put it on the map because we're going to give you our business. Now let's get into this powerful show. Welcome to the Lance Wallnau Show, also known as Firewall on Real America's Voice. I always like the Saturday spot before Steve Bannon. I enjoy listening to Steve, and I find that maybe this story is one he wasn't able to cover this week because he's been so focused on the Washington shutdown. Have you been aware that Russell Brand, who I've been extolling as another one of those like Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan types, that is moving more and more to the right all the time, constantly, as his eyes are open, this raging, hilarious, irreverent liberal is sounding a lot more, what do you know, like one of us. So surely he got himself in trouble with, just like Tucker, just like every one of them, he now discovered that you are the darling of the left as long as you are not speaking about exposing the corporate America collusion with government, big government suppression of truth and media manipulation. He has got himself in some trouble. Now they're going back into the archives, kind of like they did with Trump with the Access Hollywood video. They're going back a decade ago to a time when he admitted he had a sex addiction and a problem he had to get out of. He gets his life together and is trying to walk in an enlightened path. He always welcomes 6.5 million awakening wonders. And now they're trying to tear him limb from limb, discredit him, embarrass him, humiliate him, smear him, and deplatform him and demonetize him, as they do to anyone who defects from their narrative. And I have the luxury of being branded by the left as a kind of a delirious right-wing Christian fanatic who's known for wanting the bad boys to join our side. I call them bad boy billionaires. I was praying for Elon Musk and Donald Trump and these various guys. And sure enough, man, Elon has been coming over. He did us a big service, I think, with X. And Donald Trump, the service he's provided to us. And now I'm really calling for this bad boy to come on over. Red Rover, we call Russell Brand over. Thank you, son. All right, let's go. I want you to see what Russell has to say about his recent traumas.
Hello there, you awakening wonders. Obviously, it's been an extraordinary and distressing week, and I thank you very much for your support and for questioning the information that you've been presented with. By now, you're probably aware that the British government have asked big tech platforms to censor our online content, and that some online platforms have complied with that request. What you may not know is that this happens in the context of the Online Safety Bill, which is a piece of UK legislation that grants sweeping surveillance and censorship powers, and it's a law that has already been passed. I also don't imagine you've heard of the Trusted News Initiative. Now, as is often the case when a word like trusted is used as part of an acronym to describe an unelected body, trust is the last thing you should be offering. The Trusted News Initiative is a collaboration between big tech and legacy media organisations to target, control, choke and shut down independent media organisations, like this one. We'll be talking about that on our show on Monday on Rumble. But just to give you an idea of what the TNI is, this is a quote from one of their spokespeople. Because the actual real rivalry now is not between the BBC and CNN globally, it's actually between all trusted news providers and digital platforms. It's clear that these organisations collaborate in constructing narratives, whether that's around the war or the pandemic, and of course there are other examples. And it's very clear to me that we have to be very, very cautious indeed. That's why I'm asking you to follow me on Rumble. Rumble have made a clear commitment to free speech, and Rumble is the primary platform that we will be streaming from. We'll be back this Monday, and as usual, we'll be talking about deep state and corporate collusion and how ordinary democracy is anathema now, how it's shut down, ignored and avoided. We'll be talking about a military-industrial complex that is able to facilitate and start wars that seem sometimes to be little more than money laundering operations. And that's with all respect to the hundreds of thousands of victims of the numerous ongoing wars in the world at the moment. We'll be talking about the role of Big Pharma and how Big Pharma have been able to influence government policy around the world and how they've been able to evade due liability and necessary scrutiny, how they've been able to avoid media investigation that perhaps ought be due them. And of course, we'll be talking about media corruption and censorship. So please follow me on Rumble, because that's the only way that we can keep our voice.
Let me grab this right now.
Go to rb.rumble.com.
Hold it right there, because I wanted to get that part in on Rumble. I have not only been demonetized, I was wiped out. 200,000, 250,000 followers on YouTube. Some people, make a living off of one platform like that and destroys them. I just got wiped out. For what? To this day, I don't know. But that's the capricious and arbitrary power of big tech. And what Russell is talking about is, let's get clear about the fact that there's a constructed narrative.
This portion is too hot to handle for social media. Go to lancewallnau.com/podcast to listen to the entire show.
And you know what is happening for so many of us is we are now aware of the fact that you go to Rumble or Getter, or what's a Telegraph, or or Truth Social, and in a sense, the casualty here is still truth, because it's what you call preaching to the choir. If I go over to Getter, I see, okay, it's great. You got 1 million people that are following Steve Bannon or Dinesh D'Souza, but we're talking to ourselves. The problem is you want to be able to have a conversation where you could kind of red pill the independent, which is 1/3 of the voting population, which is now having their eyes open, thank God, by the Russell Brands and the Joe Rogans and other people. But if these powers can take them down, they will take them down. Now, what's happening here, I want to go to this article I'm reading here. I don't know who wrote it. You guys got to give me the names of the sources of these. Rumble platform at risk of shutdown. Why? Because the UK, this is your ever-shrinking global world. By the way, Mercedes Sparks is with me right here for the opening segment. You're free to say anything, jump in any time, Miss Mercedes Sparks. You can only make it for the first 2 segments. Okay. So I want you to...
No makeup today.
No, don't worry. I can't tell. Most people can't tell. You're young. You're young. Young can get away with anything. So it's but listen, the UK Parliament. You talk about a one world government, the ever shrinking world. The UK Parliament is pushing this trusted law, trusted news initiative. Reminds me of the trusted build that Dominion was offering out there in Arizona, when that one legislative lady was, challenging them, and what hell she went through. But the reality is, I don't trust their language. Trusted news initiative, the online safe.
This portion is too hot to handle for social media. Go to lancewallnau.com/podcast to listen to the entire show.
Well, no doubt you are, like me, holding your bated breath, waiting to see what's going to happen in the dilemma in Washington. But I want you to understand McCarthy's dilemma. What McCarthy did was he sold out the President Trump because he took an issue that was the destruction of the American economy, the rise of the BRICS nations to demonetize or get away from the U.S. dollar, the killing debt, the rising inflation, all of these issues really, and the runaway spending. We are $31 trillion in debt. How do you pay? That's not a number you just live with. How do we pay that back? There hasn't been in 20 years an effort made in this government to reduce its spending and pay back its own debt. No, we think we can go on forever with debt. Now we just added $2 trillion a year. We're so used to these numbers, I don't think they register anymore. Who's going to pay for that $2 trillion deficit? Well, boom, print more money. That's the situation. When you print more money, then the money becomes like monopoly money, and that's the reason why all the other nations are going for gold right now to get away from the U.S. dollar, one of the reasons. And that's why you should be thinking soberly about McCarthy's sellout. What he did was he made a deal with Biden and with Schumer and with McConnell, by the way, a backdoor deal that he would give them 2 years of free access to go ahead and run the debt up as high as they wanted to. And he sold that to his colleagues on the basis of we have the right to a kind of a line item veto of individual expenditures along the way so we can challenge the budget in certain areas. And the problem is he had no intention of ever doing that. So the game they play is they don't challenge the budget. They just approve it, and then they wait till the last minute. They wait till the last minute, like right now. When the news can kick in and manipulate you, it'll be children going without lunches throughout America, starving because of hard-hearted infighting by radical right-wing extremists in the Freedom Caucus who are tying Kevin McCarthy's hands. So they make it sound like you got an idiot fringe trying to rob kids of food. Only this time, they're not using the robbing kids of food. What they're saying is they're cutting off the military's funding. America's military, your brave soldiers on the front lines won't get a paycheck because of McCarthy and his right-wing freaks. And now the Border Patrol, like the Border Patrol is really doing anything with the border right now. The Border Patrol isn't getting funded, and so they'll play that theme, and then they'll run it in the news media, and then they'll say these out of control right-wing extremists, as though the left wing isn't the crazy extremists and the Republicans the guilty play along Washington generals to the Harlem Globetrotter Democrat Party. What you have is this disruptive shutdown, which is really discussing $120 billion of expenditure right now, which is the government needs to keep on feeding the fat machine of calorie burning. They need $120 billion, and we're shutting it down. They're not getting their $120 billion. So nobody's going to be talking about the $33 trillion. We're just talking about the $120 billion right now that's in the float for government coming back into operation. Poor Matt Gaetz. He's the one guy. I like this guy. You know, it's amazing, Mercedes, how one articulate and well-informed person can just bind so much darkness. Now, Maria Bartoloma, who is one of our people. I mean, like, I won't come against I like to say no enemies to the right, and I mean that. I don't like to attack Mark Levin because he supports the Ukraine war, but nevertheless, I got to say, Maria she sounds like she's on The View, shouting down Matt Gaetz, the only guy who was making sense, saying, it's a game they play in Washington, these continuing resolutions. We need this shutdown. We need the shutdown because we've got to look at the runaway expense before we have a Great Depression. And he's really doing what the voters are asking the Republicans to do. I want you to watch this little segment to get a sense of the shrieking opposition rational people are up against in Washington. Just take a minute of this.
Congressman, thank you very much for being here this morning. Oh, thank you. I'm glad I get to respond to your monologue, because if you're saying that I'm standing in the way of all the Republican wins, I'd love you to enumerate them. Watching my friend and mentor Jim Jordan, it was quite painful, because he started by saying we should only pick one fight, the border. But then as the interview went on, he said, well, we should pick a second fight, Jack Smith. And by the time the interview rounded out, he was saying that we shouldn't be funding Ukraine without a plan. And yet the very continuing resolution that you and Jim Jordan seem to be for continues to have $300 million more for Ukraine. So I think we ought to fight on all fronts. I think the border is very important, and the best way for us to advance the Republican border policies is to pass the Department of Homeland Security appropriations bill, do that along with veterans, defense, ag, state and foreign ops. We'll have 73% of the discretionary budget funded, and if, the Department of Labor and Education have to shut down for a few days as we get their appropriations in line, that's certainly not something that is optimal, but I think it's better than continuing on the current path we are to America's financial ruin.
Congressman, I understand, and that is why you are on this program this morning, because I want to give you a fair shot, and I want to get you heard. So tell me why you are threatening Speaker McCarthy and trying to shut down this government at a time that the Republicans have finally gotten some upper hands here in terms of wins, able to investigate President Biden on what looks like bribery.
Yeah, we don't put our pencils down in the investigation of President Biden during a shutdown, so the premise is false. Second, if Kevin McCarthy was actually serious about pursuing the Bidens, he would have sent Hunter Biden a subpoena by now. That's how you know this is sort of failure theater that you're observing. During the first year of Democrat control of the Congress, they brought in Donald Trump Jr. 3 times over nothing. Over a nothing burger. And so we seem to be fundamentally unserious in our oversight. But what is serious is the fact that we are spending more than $7 trillion a year, bringing in around $5 trillion a year. And I want to fund the government. I'm not pro-shutdown. But the way to fund the government is not the same way we've been doing it since the mid-90s, where it's one up or down vote on the entire government all at once. We should have separate single subject spending bills. Kevin McCarthy promised that in January. He is in breach of that promise. So I'm not here to hold the government hostage. I'm here to hold Kevin McCarthy to his word.
I want, so just, you have to hear like what he's saying. He's saying, hey, I've offered, we can fund the part that is the most sensitive right now, which is package individual appropriation bills for the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, Agriculture, as well as state foreign operations under a single rule. Each bill would get its own vote on the floor. But he's basically saying is he's proposing a way to get some strategic funding through, but it's not a single up or down vote because there's so much pork and fat and waste and stupidity and inside dealing that the donors and the politicians don't want the American people to know about that's layered inside of this $2 trillion gap. And they don't care. Listen, the people that are making money in America, they can survive what they're creating. You and I are on the receiver end of this thing. So what Matt Gaetz is basically saying is that McCarthy has failed. And when I said earlier, he took something away from President Trump, he took his ability to make it a campaign issue. By funding 2 years in, making that agreement, he took away the strategic ability of Trump as the head of the Republican Party to talk about the dangerous financial situation we're in as a pressing concern against the backdrop of a strong Republican Party demanding fiscal discipline and responsibility. It's interesting to me, the number of Democrat mayors that are right now, some of them are actually converting over to being Republicans because they're saying the two things that are out of control, like in New York City. If we have the time, we do it in this segment. The fact that they're doing like $100 billion, $200 billion a year in the hole, having to fund the illegal immigrants that are in the city now, and they're continuing to come in. So they have to put them in hotels. They got to kick people out of the hotels, and they have to pay those hotels and pay for the services to subsidize illegals that are coming in because the Democrats have a wide open border and Republicans aren't making an issue out of it. What I'm saying to you is that that razor-thin majority that we gave ourselves in the midterms is a source of some concern. If you share with me a hope that we could turn this around, we're going to have to show up in a way we didn't do in the midterms. I didn't understand. It's a bit of a mystery to me, Mercedes. why it is that we've got this slim 7, or 10 congressmen margin in Washington, and now even they're divided. You've got the Jim Jordan not on the same page as Matt Gaetz, but I'm standing with Matt Gaetz on this, and I think you ought to also. That the Speaker of the House now has this tough problem. He can go do his deal with the Democrats. He can get the votes. He can do what he wants to do, in which case he will prove that the Republican Party, for the most part, is a compromised entity, that it's a uniparty. We've said it all along, that we've got so many compromised and wishy-washy Republicans that are only interested in what's good for them, that they won't take the principled stand to deal with the debt. So it could be that the Republicans and the Democrats line up in order to keep McCarthy in his seat, to push through what they want for their uniparty budget. And what Matt Gaetz is going to gain out of that is exposure of the game for what it really is, that these people are, including Republicans, are not doing their job. They're not representing you. It's kind of like Churchill predicting what's going to come in the future. And I think that history is going to be very kind to Matt Gaetz for that. And in the short term, he's going to get bludgeoned for it. What do you say?
I'm just saying, the American people got to tighten the budget. We're not spending like we used to be spending. I mean, you see the price of eggs and gas and all that stuff. So why shouldn't the government have to also tighten its belt and cut some government spending? Like, it's weird to expect that of the American people, but yet the government's just going to do whatever they want to do. Anywho.
Well, Lindsey Graham was promised $300 billion more is going to be coming to him for the Ukraine budget. You know, those long-range missiles is so important to have to go provoke war with Russia. And I think if the American people, if you that are listening, don't rise up and act intelligently and with self-control, but with intensity, I think we're in danger of losing the republic. But I do believe with this kind of information, we can overcome. I wanted to take a minute to talk about one of my great heroes of the faith, which is Mike Lindell. What's really cool about Mike is it's not just the pillow. It's the fact that the guy makes really cool products. For instance, I start my day off with my coffee. I had a cup of coffee the other day here in the office, and I said, no, I want that. It wasn't like Starbucks. It tastes better. And it was Mike's coffee. I said, what is it? They go, Mike Lindell's coffee. I said, my gosh, get a bunch of my coffees. Now, the best way to start the day is you put on these slippers, right? And have your My Coffee. If you've not worked with these slippers yet, I'm not kidding you. There's a special kind of design that Mike has put into these with 4 layers of cushion with a solid sole and a fur interior. I call it my sip and slip strategy. I start my day off by slipping on my slippers and having a sip of Mike's coffee. But you know what else I'm curious about now? Because I've got to check out the 2.0 pillow. The 2.0 pillow actually is designed so that it distributes the heat of your own head, your face. You know, you're lying there, and it makes it so the pillow's always cool. Now, I like that because I wake up in the middle of the night and have to flip over my pillow because it gets hot. Mike's solved that problem. I want you to go to mypillow.com, promo code Lance, because you can get a discount that I've set up for the pillows, for the coffee, and for the slippers. And do it today. You'll be happy.
Did you enjoy this latest episode? Please remember to share it with your friends, because the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to navigate the world.